Shalom and welcome to Education in a Time of War. Today with me, Me'ir Sherer, and today is January 24, 2024. I'm Rachel Raz, and I started to host this conversation with different educators and leaders in Israel and the United States and other places in the world to preserve and share some of the impact of the war on education. Also for you, our audience, to hear about some inspiring people and their inspiring work, and hopefully some best practices to take with us also later on, not just in a time of war, but some things that we can learn about. So thank you so much, Me'ir, for being with us. It's wonderful to have you. Me'ir is the Director of Congregational Learning at Temple Emunah in Lexington, Massachusetts, and I had the honor to see some of your work over the years, and more recently with Israel education regarding in reaction to the war in Israel. And Me'ir, can you please share with us a little bit about your school?
Sure.
What kind of school? How many kids?
Sure. First, thank you so much, Rachel. It's a privilege to be participating in this podcast. So I work at a conservative synagogue with about 550 family units, and our school is kindergarten through 12th grade. We have about 125 students, again, K through 12. We're heavy on the K through 7, and they meet on Sundays, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It's a 2-day a week. So half the school continues on Tuesday after being with us on Sundays, and the other half on Wednesdays after being with us on Sundays. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade only come on Sunday. And then we have a high school, 8th through 12th grade, which meets on Wednesday evenings. And we draw students from Greater Lexington, Waltham, Bedford, Carlisle, I'm sure I'm going to forget some place, Wilmington, North Reading, Arlington, and this Lexington and the surrounding areas. Where we really reach out.
And the kids mostly go to public school during the day, and they come to the congregation to get their Jewish heritage and traditions, and to be with their own community for this enrichment program. And I know that. And I know, Me'ir, that October 7 was a big shift and made a huge impact on your school and your community. But before that, I know that Israel education is one of the pillar or core of a very significant part in the education of this congregation. Can you share with us, before October 7, what was Israel education like? And I know you can't go over all of the curriculum, but just a few examples.
Sure. I mean, we've been looking at how we teach Israel for quite some time now, and how we teach Israel differently today from 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And, it's a bit odd to say we were prepared for this moment. No one's really prepared for a moment like this, but we were in a good place to address what was happening and to respond to it because of all the work that we've been doing over the years. And I liken where we are now, or at least where we were in October, to where we were in March of 2020 when we went online because of COVID. So everything changed so much. And everything changed again in October. And so much of what was happening reminded me of that time, the need to pivot. And why were we successful during COVID when we needed to pivot with our being online? We had built strong relationships among our students and between our students and our teachers. And so when we went online, we made sure that the teachers and the madrichim were meeting with the students, and that in the year after, where we had our students and madrichim move up with the classes that they had taught to a new class, so that they really took that relationship that they had established and utilized it to their advantage. And so when it comes to Israel, we already have made sure that Israel is a core topic and value our connection to Israel in our school. And children are learning about Israel in every single grade in a different way. So what does that mean? So in kindergarten, they're learning about the people of Israel, and we've made a real effort to make sure that when we talk about peoplehood, we talk about all the citizens of Israel. So we're including the different types of Jews who live in Israel, the non-Jews who live in Israel, the Arab Muslim, the Arab Christian, the Druze, and we want our kids to see those faces, again, to set them up for the realities of the world. You know, some of what we do with the thought in the back of our minds, what are our children going to experience when they're in high school? What are they going to experience when they're in college? And they need to know a true Israel. So we had a solid foundation. We have Israeli folk dancing in our school. We have Shira in our school. We although the Hebrew that the students are learning is really prayer-based Hebrew, we are using Hebrew in our school. And so I felt that we were very much in a solid place to address what was happening. I say this because I have colleagues who were in a different place. And for them, it's been a challenge teaching Israel at war. And they're facing a lot of anti-Israel or anti-Zionist sentiment on the part of their high schoolers. We're not facing that so much. And I believe it's because we have been talking about Israel all along, and our kids know that we are a synagogue that believes in Zionism. And at the same time with that, we believe in a two-state solution. And so it's a fine line there, but so many of these concepts were not new to our children. And having the discussions, again, we don't shy away from these discussions. And I know that in some synagogues, Israel's not being taught today. And I found that those are the synagogues where there's a real challenge today in responding to what's happening. Our students were together for Simchat Torah on that Saturday night, and we knew that we needed to respond immediately.
Me'ir, you're jumping a little bit. You're already jumping to October 7th. And what others are doing and what others are not doing, I know, because it's very emotional, everything that's going on. But I want to take you a little bit, as you mentioned, second grade are studying, and every grade is learning something about Israel, because Israel, first of all, the land of Israel is very significant in the Jewish tradition, in Jewish history, like the Bible, the stories. Some of our holidays are rooted with the land of Israel. Right. We are actually recording it today. It's Tu B'Shvat. It's like a Harbor Day of the land of Israel. And we are sitting in the Boston area where the land is covered with snow, and we are celebrating birthday for the trees. Right. And this is another connection to the land of Israel, because in Israel now it's almost springtime. It's winter going into spring. The trees the almond trees is blooming, and this is like the festive time to celebrate the land. So you've been infusing all of this into the curriculum as a community because of the history, because of the tradition, because when we pray to the direction of Israel. So there are so many levels with connection to the land, but there is also the young state of Israel that we have a very strong relationship as a Jewish state. And that's why I know that many educators, many other people, surprised that maybe it impacted our schools, because this war is taking place 5,000 miles away. And why is the war that's taking place there? And I want to remind those that are joining us that are not familiar with what happened in October 7, that on October 7, thousands of Hamas terrorists entered the southern border of Israel. They slaughtered, killed, burned, raped over 1,000 people. They kidnapped hundreds of people. They shot many rockets. And this war, as we speak now in January, is still taking place.
Yes.
Still people are being killed on both sides. Still, we have many hostages, over 130 hostages are still captured, and it's still impacting us. And for those that maybe didn't follow the news, even though it's very clear, there are lots of protests in the street of the United States. We see in many public school, universities, we see lots of protests, putting Israel as the villain in all of these things and forgetting what happened on January 7th. And so you are in a place that your students go to public school. We were in touch actually a week before it happened because they wanted to open a Palestinian club in that school that promote one state solution, which means no Jews and no place for the Jews in the land, which in some ways supporting what happened in the massacre on October 7th. So you've been dealing with this. So now let me take you to this point, and not what other people are not doing, but what you've been doing, because it's been very inspiring from day one. As you started to say, we got together the day that it all started, because you knew that it's affecting you, it's affecting the children, it's affecting all of us. So please share with us October 7th, and then a little bit what happened after. What did you do with your community?
So there were a number of things. One, you're reminding me about what our conversation about what was happening in the Lexington Public High School just a week before, and it was in a strange way something that prepared us for this moment, because I already had the conversation with the faculty about where we stand as a synagogue, needing to be prepared to speak to our teens who are aware of what's going on at their high school, and that we need to have somewhat of a unified message that where we stand with Israel. So we were already thinking about this, and we decided this year that we would have our 3rd through 7th graders and high schoolers come to Erev Simchat Torah services, and in lieu of coming for our 3rd through 7th graders on Sunday morning for a special program, that we would, they would know that by coming on that evening, they could sleep in the next day. So walking into Simchat Torah services, I knew we had this captive audience, and that we couldn't ignore what was happening. So fortunately, we have a number of full-time educators where I work, and we had a dinner Erev Simchat Torah, and I pulled the educators aside, and we had a quick discussion about what we were going to do, and then we pulled all the kids together, and we said, look, we know this is what we know. We have a lot of questions. You may not be aware of what's happening yet. You may have a lot of questions too. We're here for each other. Please ask us your questions. We want an open dialogue. We care about our friends, family, etc. in Israel. And with all this recognizing, so much was going through our minds, how our kids are connected to Israel. So a 1/3 of our kids go to Jewish overnight camp, and they have counselors who are from Israel. They have bunkmates who are from Israel. In addition, we have students who have aunts and uncles or cousins who are in Israel. So remembering how we're all connected, our 6th graders for years now, a good 8-9 years, have been involved in a partnership with a school in Haifa as part of the Boston-Haifa connection. And so, again, we've fostered these relationships because we want our kids to have a direct connection to Israel. And so what do we do with that when there's something like this happening in the world? We have to really be there for our kids. And so we began right away. And then within that first week, I sent out an email to all of our parents saying, this is where we are. This is what we're doing. It was very much a multi-pronged approach where I wanted to leave us with, well, then what can we do? So it was, we're going to listen to your kids. We're going to find out what they know. We're going to find out what they want to know. We're going to make sure that the discussions are age appropriate. And really, it's going to be with third grade and on up that we're going to have the big discussions. And as we move up, the discussions will be deeper. And then we're going to ask our children to write cards or to create videos. We want to leave them with some sense of what do we do with all of this, because it's so heavy, and we didn't want our kids to feel hopeless. And so we shared that with parents, and parents were extremely grateful. And then there were a few follow-up emails that went out whenever information was coming my way from Israel Link or from the I Center or from the Center of Israel Education or the Jewish Education Project in New York, best practices or what have you, links to information, Dr. Rachel Fish's Boundless. We sent that information to our parents. Here are the key things to focus on. Here is how to respond to your children's questions. Here is how to create an environment where your children feel safe and where they also are able to ask questions, etc. So there's a lot of wonderful stuff out there, and we made sure that our parents were aware of everything along the way. When we got information that Hamas was going to flood the social media with videos and negative information, and that we were encouraged to inform our students to shut everything down, we let our parents know immediately. And they were extremely grateful for that. So we've really had this open dialogue from the very beginning, and we've been very honest with our parents, and we've only gotten support. No one has said, what's going on here? We're not comfortable with this. It's much more, thank you so much. You're giving us more material and information. You're guiding us in the right direction so that we can be there for our kids. And then a step further, which we brought into whenever we're meeting now, we take a few moments to ask our kids how they're doing, what's happening in their public school, especially with the high schoolers. Is there anything you want to share with us? How can we be helpful to you with what you're facing? And we've had some deep discussion about anti-Semitism and about Israel, and how do we stand up for ourselves in a safe way? When is it worth to have the deep discussion with a friend who thinks differently than you, and when is it not? And how do we move forward with those discussions? So it's really been multifaceted, and the discussions, it's important just for us to keep the discussions going, because our children are facing a lot in public school, and again, wanting to know what's happening with their camp counselors. And here we have this sixth grade project, and our kids are connecting with one another. Hopefully that answers a bit.
No, this is amazing. Maybe we should do a little break with looking at the video.
Sure.
That you mentioned that some of the grades send to their partners in Israel. And I really like the fact that you didn't want them to feel powerless and hopeless, because I think that this is what lots of people feel. And this is, again, not just about the war or anything that's going on in the world. Sometimes we feel that there is nothing for us to do, and it's scary, and it's hopeless. And so the fact that you found some way for them to take their energy and create something, it's very important.
And I can add, in the way that I was talking before about this being similar to how we pivoted in the early days of COVID. We, as educators where I work, availed ourselves of every opportunity to participate in these webinars that were being offered to us. And I have to really applaud the Jewish education world for offering so much. So for a good 2 weeks, we were just if we weren't teaching in the classroom or putting projects together or lesson plans, we were glued to the computer, and we were engaged in webinars on best practice, on how to talk to our kids, on different project ideas that we could participate in and things like that. And so it wasn't, I felt very much supported and felt that there was this kind of guidance that was needed. So our third graders, our fourth graders, our sixth graders all created videos that we sent over to Israel, to soldiers and to students. Here's an example.
2, 3, go.
Hello from Temple Emunah in Boston. We love and support you. All of us pray for you and your family's safety during this tough time. We love you. Stay strong. Woo! Peace out.
So again, this was a way in which our kids could do something and not feel isolated and alone and helpless. We also had children, we invited them, and this was through a project that I found online, create cards that we then sent to a Jewish organization that was sharing them with soldiers. And I want to make sure that.
Yeah, you can look it up, and while you're looking, you know, the nice thing about it also that we're not just talking about there is a war there. You know, there are real people. There are real people that in pain and suffer, and the fact that you're making this connection with the kids, that they see that there are people on the other side. Because I think very often, like when we see all the protests and people are talking about, yeah, let's kill this or let's do this, and they don't really think for a second that they're actually a human being in the other side.
Yes.
So I think the fact that you took the time and they wrote it. So this is, tell us something about this note.
So this is one of the cards that we had our fourth graders create cards. And so this is a child who's wishing peace, love, happy life to an Israeli. And again, these were then scanned, sent to an organization that is distributing cards to soldiers. They then print out the cards. So it takes away the whole, how am I going to get these cards to Israel? And how am I going to get them in you know, quickly to Israel? So this is just one card, the back, and then I'm going to see here, I should have the front too.
And there were several organizations that did that, because it's also like when somebody is in a difficult time, like in a time of war, to know that you are not alone, that other people care for you. It's very, very important. And it can be a war, it can be other natural disaster or anything else that you go through. Somebody's sick, somebody lost somebody in their family. The fact that they know that somebody cares, somebody sent something, it's beautiful, you know, to see what they came and actually was able to be in your community, in the congregation one day when we the children and families wrote more cards for lone soldiers.
Yes.
And I remember the
around Hanukkah time.
Yeah, around Hanukkah, we're talking about how to bring light through sending those cards, and the very meaningful conversation that I had with some parents, with some students. It was also each one of this activity created an opportunity for conversation. So Me'ir, I want to ask you another question. For years, you invested in your own growth and learning. Some educators or head of congregation or rabbi don't have this comfort level to have this conversation because they don't have the knowledge. What would you recommend for them, you know, because you're definitely in a place of comfort of having this conversation? What are the things that maybe you can share from your life journey, that kind of the experiences that help you build and come to this place? Because it takes time, it's not magic.
Right. I mean, I there's so much I'm constantly realizing about myself, my own experience. I grew up in a community, in a synagogue that had a strong connection and commitment to Israel. And so I feel it in my gut. That isn't to say that the way I was taught Israel is the way that I teach Israel today. I think that, it was the way in which Israel was taught at a certain time, and today I believe it's more honest, and it's, we're able to be more nuanced, and it's also responding to how our children think today, because I know that we thought differently in the 70s and the 80s. There are certain questions that I wouldn't have even been thought of asking that our kids today are asking. And I've always had this strong connection to Israel. So I've availed myself of every opportunity to learn, and because I've gone into education, to learn how to teach Israel. So I've taken classes at our Hebrew college in Greater Boston on teaching Israel. I was a fellow in the Melton Senior Educators Program in Israel and took classes on teaching Israel education. And I've continued to participate in seminars and webinars. So the Center for Israel Education in Atlanta, going to their week-long program in teaching Israel, and get materials from the I-Center, from the Jewish Education Project, webinars, and the portals also have material there. I know that I need to be well educated, and I'm honest. If there are things I don't know, I will tell the kids I don't know. And I've had some very interesting discussions with our 7th graders. In that year, we really focused on the establishment of the state, and I found myself letting their public school teachers off the hook if they don't have the answers for the kids, or if what they're telling them, in my opinion, is untrue. So I'm able to, and I say, like, I'm not going, this is the way I understand it. And your teachers are teaching a lot about a lot. I'm teaching a lot about something very focused, in depth. I feel prepared, and I'm continuing to learn, what do we mean by narrative? When we share different narratives, what do we mean by history? What is true? What isn't true? I mean, all of this is so much in our thinking today. People talking about how, well, your truth is an alternative truth to my truth. There can be two truths. What does that mean? There can be two truths. And we were looking at the partition plan of 1947, Kaftep in November, on the 29th of November, on that date. And, I had to teach it in a different way than I have in the past, that if the organized Palestinian response is that the UN did not have the rights or the power to partition the land after the British left at the end of the British Mandate, then you're going to have one narrative. If you believe that they did have the right because somebody had to do something with this land that was not a country, a state, then you're going to say the land was divided into 2 states, 3 sections for each, and the Jewish community accepted, and the Palestinian Arab communities did not accept. And so that begins the story for the past 75 years of what's happening and in Israel, and what do we mean by from the river to the sea. Have there been attempts at peace negotiations, etc.? So I want the kids to know that, yes, this is my truth. This is my understanding. It's not the understanding of others. And that's part of the challenge that we're facing today, that these two narratives and truths are in conflict with one another, and what do we do with that?
And I think that the nice thing that we did, since we're both, active in the same community, that probably a week after the beginning of the war on October 7th, we brought Dr. Rachel Fish, to give like a brief class about like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, kind of one-on-one, that was rooted with facts. That's right. And this is also, like you mentioned, the Center for Israel Education with the Professor Ken Stein. He's always looking at like maps and facts and document. It's not stories. It's just like really. What was it? A document that the British brought up? Was the UN? They held this votes or not? These are things that they're either happened or not, and they did.
Right.
So I think the fact that you're, bringing, these scholars and engaging in education, because I think at the bottom line, we're all coming to knowledge. Yeah. And we find that lots of people, when they don't have the knowledge, they're either afraid and they're not talking about it, because sometimes it's correct. Like I don't talk about topics that I'm not familiar with. But if you're a head of a school or a rabbi in a congregation, and Israel is part, and the land of Israel is part of your religion, for people that don't know Judaism enough, that it's really woven in, unlike other religions, you need to educate yourself. Right.
And I tell my teachers that if they're not comfortable teaching something, or they don't feel that they have the knowledge that they need, that this falls on me. I will come in, I take this on, and we, as you mentioned, had put together already a series of lectures on understanding Israel in 75 before everything happened in October, that would bring together adults and high schoolers, because we really wanted the two populations to have discussions together. Again, in part, so that adults can speak to their children when their children are in college, coming home saying, I'm so confused, and this is what's happening on the college campus, and that the parents should know that things on the college campus are very different today than they were years ago, and that their children are facing these challenges. And we just continue using the resources that we have, and I'm very clear to my students that this is where I stand personally. This is where the synagogue stands. You're free to think differently. I know that we have different approaches in education. I think that we want to be unbiased. I don't think we can be. I think that we are biased in how we teach. We indoctrinate. No matter what we do in our school systems, we're indoctrinating democracy versus communism. So I'm not afraid to say this is where I stand. We are Zionists. We believe in a two-state solution, and this is why. And not everybody agrees. Not everybody thinks the same. So I don't want you to all be little me, and to mimic what I say, but I want you to know why I feel the way I do. Here's the knowledge base. Here's the information. And if it makes sense to you and it resonates, great. I want you to understand.
And in some way, I think it's a good way to kind of like conclude a little bit our conversation. You have a very good point about what is education in general, and this is not just message about Jewish education, Israel education, but education in general. Like I constantly think about we as Americans thinking about what kind of society we want to have. When I'm looking at what's going on right now in universities and all of this like conversation and this group against that group and all of that. So I'm thinking about what kind of citizen, what kind of an America we want to have. We're also getting into election season. So it's just like, it's time for us to think what our values, what do we want to do? And this will impact what kind of education. So, right. So I want every educator, every politician, every parent to think about what is a successful citizen in the world, in our society. What do we want to achieve? Do we want them to ask questions? Do we want them to respect? We want them to be aggressive and violent, like some of these terrifying kind of protests in the universities are going, that it's not a conversation of learning and engaging in conversation, rather you are evil, we're going to kill you, or we are the truth. And so I think that in general, we all need to think about education. We choose which books we're bringing to the class. We choose which stories. We choose what to teach. Another thing is, should our public school now teach about what's happening in the Middle East or other things? Because one of the things that you also mentioned that was very, very important, that you said we couldn't stay aside and not talk about it with our kids. And sometimes, like I remember one day there was a little earthquake here, and my daughter came from school, and I said to her, "So did you talk about earthquake?" And they said, "No, they did the same exact thing." And it says, like, this is an opportunity to teach something that just happened around us. So where are the teachers to come and say something is happening in the world? Let's slow down. Let's talk about it. And if I don't know, let's bring other people that's knowledgeable. Who are the people that are knowledgeable?
I'll tell you that also, for me, I mean, these past months have been very challenging, but I also have been so supported by my colleagues at the synagogue and by the lay people. And I have always wanted to know, when I've interviewed at different Jewish organizations, where they stand and the values of the institution. And so that my values are in line with the values of the institution. And I know that that may not be the case for everyone, but Israel has always come up. And so I'm in a place where I'm not challenging the lay people and my supervisors. They're supporting me, and I'm supporting them. And so that makes a world of difference. You need to know where you are, and again, not shy. If you shy away, and if you don't know, at some point it's gonna come back to bite you.
And it's very important, Me'ir, because for over the years I met with so many teams of educators in many schools, Jewish school, public schools in different countries, in different settings. And very often I ask them, when you say that you're a good school, what does it mean? Mm-hmm. Tell me what kind of citizen you're here to raise. And many of them didn't really know how to answer this question. And I say, if you don't know what's your goal, how do you build experiences that will lead there? So this is, a bigger conversation.
I say, when it comes to Israel, because this always comes up, people have said, we want our children to have a love for Israel. We want our children to have a connection to Israel. It's hard to love in general. I want our kids to care. I want our kids to care and to know that it matters. And they can decide if the relationship's going to be a healthy one or if it's going to be a tumultuous one. They can decide if they love, if they don't love, but they need to care, because the Jewish people care, because it's part of who we are. Israel is a family member, and so you need to care just because of that, for that one reason.
And to be knowledgeable.
Yes.
And to be knowledgeable, and this is what you've been investing in, lots of the knowledge of them and their parents and your team. So Me'ir, I really want to, unless you have another last message or something, or a question that you wish I asked you.
I think we're good.
So I think we're good. So I would like to thank you very much, first of all, for everything that you're doing. And I'm going to put our slides so they know again your name. I really want to thank you for everything you're doing, Me'ir. You're an inspiration for me because I'm very lucky to sometime step into your office and to your program and see the engagement with the teens. And actually tonight we have another program with the teen and the wider community, learning about the laws and constitution and other things in Israel with the law professor that's joining us from Harvard. And really the caring, when you said that you are meeting with a student and ask them first of all how they're doing, I think this is the most important thing that we need to keep in mind, because everything else is not as important if we don't really care for them. So thank you very much, Me'ir.
Thank you, Rachel.
Chazak very much in all of your work. And thank you for sharing it with us and with the audience.
Thank you for inviting me.